My parents cut off my tuition unless I apologized to my sister, so I sent one email that destroyed everything. Hi, I'm Lucas, 21, and on Christmas Eve, my parents cut off my college tuition until I apologized to their favorite child, my sister. I said one word, and by morning, their whole world flipped upside down. Let's rewind. So I grew up in one of those families that looked great on paper. You know the type. Holiday cards and color-coordinated sweaters. Dad with the firm handshake and a country club membership. Mom hosting wine nights for women named Trish and Meredith. And then there was my older sister, Haley. 3 years ahead, golden since birth. The type who could burn down the kitchen and still get praised for trying something creative. Me? I got grounded for breathing too loud during her piano recital. Now, to be fair, I wasn't the easiest kid. Quiet, observant, the one who read books at family barbecues and made sarcastic comments at the wrong times. But I worked hard. Straight A's, debate club, weekend shifts at a bookstore. Still, in our house, Haley's C+ and Kim got a celebratory dinner. My 4.0? A nod and a question about how I planned to maintain it. Our parents, Todd and Celeste, ran a boutique financial consulting business in North Carolina. Image was everything, which meant Haley was everything. She was charm, charisma, potential husband bait. I was the backup plan, the one they bragged about to friends but forgot existed at home. Until I found the spreadsheet. See, Haley was dating Zach, the heir to a massive logistics company. Dad's biggest client. The kind of guy who wore loafers without socks and called his Tesla the Whip. Our parents basically held prayer circles for their relationship. But behind the scenes, Haley was milking Zach for money. Like, tens of thousands. Fake investment pitches, car repair sob stories, surprise, tuition gaps. And she kept track. Every lie, every transfer, right there on a locked Excel file named Miscellaneous Expenses. And guess who found it when her laptop froze and I offered to help? That was the moment everything changed. But I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. I backed it all up. Organized it. Watched her continue her charade while Mom and Dad toasted to her bright future. And when Haley announced their engagement at Thanksgiving, I smiled politely while mentally checking off step 1. I didn't plan to use the info. Not unless I had to. But then came Christmas Eve. After dinner, Mom pulled me aside. Said Dad and Haley wanted to talk. We sat in the study, me on the couch, them standing like judges. They were deeply disappointed in my behavior lately. Apparently, I'd been cold and unsupportive of Haley. I needed to apologize. Publicly. Sincerely. Or else. No more tuition. They thought they had me cornered. That I'd crawl. All I said was, fine. And that, dear reader, is where it all began. I don't think my parents expected fine to mean anything more than begrudging compliance. To them, I was the quiet one. The obedient one. The one who didn't make waves. Just got good grades and stayed out of the way. But what they didn't realize was, I'd been quietly building my own escape plan for over a year. Let's back up a little. The moment I saw that spreadsheet on Haley's laptop, I started documenting everything. Screenshots, recorded voice memos, transcripts of her late-night FaceTime calls with other guys. She was playing Zach like a violin, and the worst part? She wasn't even subtle. She once labeled a $5,200 withdrawal guilt gift after pretending to cry. I built a folder. Organized it by date, topic, and severity. Color-coded, even. Call it overkill, call it paranoia, I call it insurance. Around that same time, my roommate at university, Noah, had introduced me to the concept of a contingency plan. Noah was the kind of guy who had 3 backup options for every major life decision, and he rubbed off on me. With his help, I found a scholarship-based alternative program out in Oregon. Smaller school, same field of study, just without the East Coast pretentiousness or parental funding strings. I got in, quietly, told no one, and I stashed every penny I earned at the bookstore in a separate account, one with no family ties, no oversight. By the end of fall semester, I had enough saved to cover 2 semesters, plus a security deposit on a tiny off-campus apartment. I didn't tell my parents, of course. They'd have found a way to spin it as betrayal. I just let them believe I was fully reliant on their generosity, the way they liked it. So when they pulled that stunt on Christmas Eve, cutting off tuition unless I bowed to Haley, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't bargain. I smiled, went upstairs, and packed. 12 hours later, I was carrying boxes down the stairs while Haley was still in her silk pajamas, sipping coffee and pretending to scroll Instagram. Her jaw dropped when she saw me. "You're seriously leaving?" she asked, eyes wide. "Where are you even going?" "Out west," I said. "School starts January 3rd. "But Mom and Dad already said what they needed to say," I interrupted. "So did I." Then she froze, like some part of her brain just registered what I might have done. Her voice got thin. "Lucas, please tell me you didn't send it." Dad appeared at the top of the stairs, adjusting his robe, looking like a man who still thought he had control of the situation. "Send what?" he asked. "Yeah, that's when things got fun." I set the last box down on the floor and looked at them. Haley's face had gone from brunch influencer pink to ghost-level pale. Dad, still clueless, crossed his arms and repeated, "Send what, Lucas?" The silence stretched long enough for my mom to enter the room, robe cinched tight, mascara already smudged like she'd slept in it. She took one look at me, at the boxes, then at Haley, who was starting to breathe like someone had just kicked the air out of her lungs. "I emailed Zach," I said. The words landed like a grenade. Just 3 syllables, but they detonated the whole facade my family had built for years. "I emailed Zach everything." I continued, the screenshots, the texts, the spreadsheet where Haley labeled him primary ATM in her budget notes. And before anyone starts the whole "you misunderstood" routine, I included explanations. Footnotes. Dates. I highlighted the parts where she literally talked about crying on cue. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad looked like someone had told him his golf club burned down. Haley just whispered, "Oh my God," and sank onto the couch like her bones gave up. Dad finally found his voice, and of course, it was the wrong one. "You had no right." "I had every right," I snapped. "You made my tuition conditional on protecting a con artist. I gave you a chance to back off. You didn't. So I stopped playing." Mom blinked hard, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to scream, but couldn't pick the right volume. And then the phone rang. Dad glanced down. The caller ID lit up with Zach Montgomery. He answered like he was walking into a conference call with a $1 million client. Calm voice, fake cheer, a total mask. That lasted about 5 seconds. Because on the other end of the line, Zach wasn't yelling. He was cold, measured, legal. I didn't hear every word, but phrases like fraud, family attorneys, and full repayment with interest weren't exactly subtle. Dad's mouth got tighter with every sentence. Finally, he hung up, turned to Haley, and said something I'll never forget. "What did you do?" Haley looked up, mascara streaking down her cheeks, and said, "I didn't think he'd believe Lucas." That was the last straw. I picked up my backpack, slung it over my shoulder, and headed for the door. And as I opened it, I turned back and added, "The email was scheduled. Midnight auto-send. You thought you were playing chess? I've been building my own board." Then I walked out. Into the snow. Into freedom. You ever feel lighter than air and heavier than a mountain at the same time? That was me, sitting in the back of a rideshare at 6:45 a.m. on Christmas morning with 3 boxes, a duffel bag, and a flash drive in my coat pocket holding digital proof of every lie my sister ever told a man who loved her. The driver didn't say much, thankfully. Just tapped the heater up a notch and nodded when I said, "Union Station." As we pulled away from the house, I didn't look back. I knew if I saw them standing in the doorway. Haley crying, Mom shaking her head, Dad trying to pretend none of it was happening, I might hesitate. And I couldn't afford hesitation. I had exactly 1 shot at leaving clean. The train station was quiet. Just a few travelers and a sleepy barista who handed me my coffee like she knew I was running from something. I texted Noah, "On my way. Appreciate you more than I can ever say." He replied with a meme of Gandalf saying, "You shall not pass back into that house." That guy gets me. 3 hours later, I stepped off the train in Oregon, dragging my suitcase behind me, breathing air that somehow felt clearer, like it hadn't passed through years of family politics first. The small university felt different from the moment I stepped on campus. There was no marble lobby, no $8 lattes or investment bros arguing in elevators. Just brick buildings, chilled air, and people who said hey like they meant it. I checked into housing, dumped my boxes, and walked 5 blocks to the off-campus apartment I'd toured virtually months ago. Tiny? Yes. Slight smell of old ramen? Also yes. But it was mine. Paid for with my own money. No strings. No threats. No conditional love. The first night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, but because my body didn't know how to process silence that wasn't laced with tension. I laid on my thrift store futon, staring at the ceiling, half expecting my phone to light up with Dad's voice in all caps. Instead, the only ping I got was from Zach. One line. Thank you. You didn't know me that, but you did it anyway. Respect. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I needed his validation, but because it reminded me that telling the truth mattered, even if it burned everything down. The next morning, I started orientation. And for the first time in my life, nobody introduced me as Haley's little brother. I was just Lucas. And honestly, that felt like a miracle. The first few weeks at my new school were the kind of peaceful I didn't even know was possible. My classes were smaller, the professors actually knew my name, and nobody cared who my family was. I got a part-time job at a campus cafe, pulling espresso for grad students and introverts. My manager was this sarcastic PhD dropout named Jules who said I had dignified trauma energy, which, apparently, made me perfect for morning shifts. Noah checked in regularly, sending updates from our old university, who was dating who, which professors had full meltdowns, and that the Collins family drama had become unofficial dorm lore. Someone had even written a Reddit post summarizing the Christmas tuition ultimatum, complete with wild theories, and someone falsely claiming they were my cousin. Spoiler, they weren't. Back home, things were unraveling fast. I didn't hear it from my parents directly, of course not. But my cousin Miles, the one relative with a moral compass and a group chat addiction, sent me the highlights. Zach's family had gone full scorched earth. They froze all contact with the Collinses, pulled out of Dad's firm entirely, and leaked the engagement story to their social circle in a way that made it very clear Haley's personal spending had been exposed. Turns out when the Montgomerys cut you off, they don't just ghost you. They revoke access to everything: connections, parties, reputations. Dad's firm lost 3 more clients in January alone. Apparently, one of them had been shopping for a new accountant anyway, and when the Zach situation hit the rumor mill, that just sealed the deal. Haley tried to spin the narrative, telling anyone who'd listened that I had doctored the evidence. But she ran into a little problem called receipts. Screenshots don't lie, especially when they're time-stamped, geotagged, and come with matching audio files. My mom tried to play mediator. She emailed me once, long and flowery, about how family can heal and how we shouldn't let money tear us apart. I replied with 2 sentences. Family didn't tear over money. It tore because no one ever told the truth. She didn't respond. Dad didn't reach out at all. Not even when Miles told me he had to lay off half his staff by March. Haley, though, she waited. She didn't text, call, email, nothing. Until the day before my birthday. When she finally did, it was a voice note. 2.5 minutes of quiet crying, fake breakthroughs, and a half apology wrapped in spiritual metaphors about growth. I didn't reply, because by then, I had already built a new version of my life. One with friends who showed up, professors who challenged me, a bank account I controlled, and a future that didn't hinge on anyone's approval but mine. I didn't need their money anymore, and I sure as hell didn't need their forgiveness. Spring rolled in quietly. The cherry trees on campus bloomed in slow motion, and my new apartment, tiny, cluttered, but proudly mine, started to feel like home. I strung up secondhand fairy lights, adopted a dying succulent from the student union, and learned that grocery store sushi was a mistake I had to make at least once. I also started sleeping. Really sleeping. Not the kind where you wake up braced for confrontation or disappointment, but the kind where you blink at the sunlight through your blinds and realize nobody can yank the rug out from under you anymore. Noah came to visit during spring break, and seeing him walk into my kitchen carrying 3 bags of chips and a giant roll of paper towels like I was still incapable of stocking the basics, that made everything feel real. You look different, he said, chewing half a sandwich in one bite. Like you're not constantly bracing for psychological warfare. Yeah, I said, cracking open a can of off-brand soda. Turns out freedom's good for the skin. We stayed up late that night, laughing until our sides hurt. I told him about the time Haley tried to convince my dad that I forged her name on a group project in middle school because she failed a quiz. He told me how my story had become a cautionary tale in his dorm, something about never underestimate the quiet sibling. By April, I had picked up a second job as a research assistant. My professor, Dr. Healy, said I had tenacity disguised as politeness, which I think was her way of saying I didn't quit even when things got ugly. She didn't know the half of it. And then, one afternoon, while I was restocking napkins at the cafe, a man in a navy blazer stepped up to the counter. Lucas Collins? I stiffened. He handed me a business card. My dad's firm. But he wasn't one of the partners. No, he was an associate. Young, nervous, and clearly sent on a mission. I was asked to deliver this, he said, sliding a letter across the counter. From your father. I didn't touch it. Did he send a check too? I asked. The guy blinked. Sorry. Never mind, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. Tell Todd I'm not interested. He left looking confused. I tossed the letter into the trash unopened. Because here's the thing. When someone finally sees your value only after you cost them everything, that's not an apology. That's a panic reaction. And I didn't build a new life just to let their regret knock on the door and walk right in. Graduation snuck up on me like a sunset on a really good day, quiet, golden, and somehow completely unreal. The ceremony was small. No caps flying, no big arena. Just folding chairs on a damp soccer field, and a class that looked more like a group of overworked grad students than future CEOs. I wore the same blazer I'd thrifted for my internship interview, and Noah texted me a photo of a mug that said, most likely to expose a family scandal before midterms. It was fitting. My name was called. I walked the stage. Nobody cheered. And that was okay. Because after everything, I didn't need applause. What I needed was peace, and I had it. After the ceremony, I went home, made a box of mac and cheese, and sat on the floor of my apartment eating it straight from the pot. My phone buzzed a few times. A voicemail from Haley. A missed call from my mom. A text from my dad that said just, proud of you. I didn't answer. Later that week, I started my new job, junior analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm run by people who actually cared about things like integrity and initiative. My mentor, Alex, was this ex-Wall Street guy who'd left after a burnout spiral and now ran a team like a mix between a startup and a therapy group. He said, I don't care about your GPA. I care if you can think. Turns out, I could. The office coffee was awful, the hours long, but I liked it. I liked being in rooms where my opinion mattered. I liked logging into a bank account that didn't come with emotional interest rates. I liked not having to explain or defend my existence to anyone. Then, about 3 months into the job, I got an email. It was from Zach. Subject line, update. All it said was, just closed my first real estate deal. Engagement ring long gone. Hope you're doing well. I smiled. Replied, congrats. No regrets. It felt like closure. Not a reunion. Not a rekindled friendship. Just two people who survived a mess and moved on. And that's when it really hit me. I wasn't the quiet sibling anymore. I wasn't the background character in Haley's drama or the disappointment my parents pretended not to resent. I was the guy who walked away, built something better, and never looked back. 2 years passed. And in that time, everything I used to think was permanent shifted. Haley faded into a quiet corner of social media. No more brunch posts. No more designer hauls. Last I heard, she was doing admin work for a mid-tier real estate office and living in a one-bedroom she shared with a rescue cat and some regret. She sent me a long email once, full of self-reflection and what I'm sure were therapy buzzwords. I didn't reply, not out of bitterness, just closure. She'd had her chapter. I was writing mine. My parents? Still in North Carolina. The house got sold after Dad's firm went belly up, and now they live in a townhouse near a strip mall, just close enough to pretend nothing changed and just far enough to avoid the people who noticed. Mom works part-time at a boutique. Dad does freelance bookkeeping, mostly for people who don't know or don't care about the collapse. Every Christmas, a card still shows up in my mailbox. Always the same. A photo of them smiling like the world didn't crack in half the year I left, and a handwritten note that says, "We hope you're well. Love, Mom and Dad." I send one back. Same stock photo, generic greeting, my name signed like it's a receipt. Because I've learned something. Some people only understand boundaries when they're made of silence and time. But not everything was about escape. Some things became about building. Like the job, which turned into a promotion last fall. Like the studio apartment, which grew into a 2-bedroom with a view. Like the friend group that started as a coffee shift and turned into Sunday night dinners and movie marathons where I'm not the quiet one anymore. I'm the guy who brings the good snacks and never misses the punchline. Noah lives a few hours away now. We still talk weekly. He still makes fun of my taste in music, and I still remind him that he once cried at a YouTube ad. Balance. I even started speaking at freshman orientation at the university I transferred to, sharing a story about resilience, about self-worth, about rebuilding when the foundation turns to sand. I never use names. But when I talk about the moment I walked out that front door with nothing but boxes and backup plans, I always end with the same line. Sometimes, the biggest apology you can give yourself is leaving the room they told you you'd never survive without. And every time, some kid in the back looks up like they needed to hear exactly that. I walk off stage, find a bench in the hallway, and breathe. Because I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm free. And finally, that's enough. The thing nobody tells you about cutting ties with your family is how weird the quiet gets. Not the bad kind of quiet, like when you're bracing for a slammed door or a guilt-trip text. I mean the eerie calm that settles in once the drama evaporates. When there's no one to impress, no one to perform for, no one to call just to argue. It's both peaceful and deeply disorienting. I remember walking into my apartment one Friday night after a long week. I had a bag of takeout in one hand, a folder of financial reports in the other, and this bizarre thought hit me. This is it. This is mine. My life. My space. My paycheck. My peace. Nobody could freeze it. Nobody could dangle it over my head. There's power in that. Subtle, quiet power. And yeah, sometimes the silence hurts. Like on birthdays or holidays. When I pass families in parks or watch coworkers FaceTime their moms just to say hi. I don't ache for my parents. I ache for the idea of what they were supposed to be. But that feeling never lasts long. Because the next day, I'll wake up to a text from Noah, brunch, or death. Or a voice memo from Jules at the cafe saying, "We're out of oat milk again, and I swear I'm going to set the espresso machine on fire." Thoughts. And suddenly, I'm grounded again. Connected. By choice, not obligation. And isn't that the dream? To build a life so rooted in authenticity that the people in it aren't there because they share your blood, but because they see you? That's what I'm building. One late night, one group chat, one earned dollar at a time. It was around year 4 post-escape when I heard the big one. Todd Collins, formerly known as Dad, was being investigated for tax fraud. I got the text from Miles, family's unofficial town crier, and it was classic him. Guess who finally got audited? Karma's wearing a 3-piece suit and smiling. I didn't even respond at first. I just stared at the message while eating cold lo mein at my desk and laughed. Like, really laughed. The kind of laugh that starts in your chest and ends with you gasping like you've just come up for air. Because of course it ended this way. Turns out, after losing the Montgomerys and hemorrhaging clients for a year, my dad had started getting creative with deductions. When that didn't cut it, he started fudging reports. Nothing massive, just enough to stay afloat. Until the IRS noticed. I followed the story in the business section of a local North Carolina paper. Dry language. Allegations. Licensing board inquiries. My dad's picture next to a headline that might as well have read, "Man who demanded perfection, forgot integrity." He avoided jail, of course. Guys like him always do. But his license? Gone. The firm dissolved. The big house? Sold. My mom, who once scoffed at anything off the rack, was now managing a boutique clothing store in a strip mall off I-85. I know this because her face appeared in a local business spotlight Facebook post where she's smiling way too hard holding a scarf. And Haley? She was doing admin work at a real estate office in Cary. Posting dog pics. No more ring shots. No more yacht weekends. Just the occasional motivational quote on a pink background about healing takes time. Miles said she still tried to spin the story. Claimed I overreacted and ruined everything out of jealousy. But it didn't really matter. Because the people who mattered, they knew. The people who stayed in my life saw the whole thing clearly. And more importantly, so did I. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the rebel. I wasn't the failure. I was the one who told the truth when it counted. And even if it burned every bridge behind me, it also lit the road ahead. 5 years out, I don't think about them much anymore. That used to feel impossible, like my family lived in my bloodstream, like no matter how far I ran, they'd echo in my head every time I made a decision or opened a door. But over time, their voices got quieter. Their rules stopped applying. Their power shrank down to nothing more than a collection of cautionary tales I carry in my back pocket. These days, I live in Seattle. I've got a job I like, a boss who doesn't flinch when I challenge bad ideas, and coworkers who think quietly competent is a compliment, not a warning. My apartment has big windows, secondhand furniture, and a shelf of plants I haven't killed yet. My life is calm, chosen, real. No more performance reviews disguised as affection. No more pretending that love has a GPA. I still get the occasional ping from the past. A birthday card from my mom. Never signed with anything more personal than thinking of you. A friend of a friend who casually mentions they ran into Haley at a networking event. Even Zach reached out once more. He'd gotten married, had a kid, said being a dad helped him really understand the value of honesty. I said congratulations and meant it. Some wounds don't need salt, just closure. The last time I saw my parents was at Uncle George's funeral. We nodded at each other across the room like distant acquaintances. No shouting, no apology, just silence padded with years of things unsaid. And I was okay with that. Because the apology I once needed, I gave it to myself. I forgave the kid I was for trying so hard to earn love that was always conditional. I forgave the teenager who played along just to keep the peace. I even forgave the version of me who hesitated before hitting send on that email to Zach. Because that kid, he saved me. He lit the match. He walked out of a house where the truth was a threat and built a life where it was a foundation. And if I could go back and tell him one thing, it'd be this. You were never the problem. You were the solution no one wanted to see. And look at you now. Still standing. Still rising. Still free.